Hey, this is Dana Perella from Cookies for Cures, and I have 2 pieces of advice. Believe in yourself and just start.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I am Kyle, and that voice you heard at the very beginning was our friend Dana, and you will hear her whole story in a future episode. So she's super awesome. We love her to death, and be looking forward to that. Sean, how's it going today?
I'm doing well and excited for another conversation. We're going to share an interview that you and I recorded recently, and I'm looking forward to today's episode. So happy you're here, happy I'm here, and most importantly, happy that our listeners are tuning in right now.
Yeah, man. And you know what, actually, Sean, I will mention for our listeners, we really appreciate when people share. If you enjoy this show, please share it with a friend, because that's how it grows, and that's good for all of us.
Yeah, and that doesn't cost anything. They can subscribe, but it's free.
It actually might work out in your favor, because they're going to think you're super cool for suggesting this podcast.
Yeah.
Or super lame.
You might forever change somebody's life.
All right. So, Sean, our interview today that we're going to share with everybody is with Lara Bloom. She is the CEO and president of the Ehlers Danlos Society. She's a global leader in the effort to improve the quality of life for people with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome.
I must admit, Laura comes from London, right? She's based in London. I don't know if she was born there, but her hometown is London, right? So she clarified during this interview or on our phone call that Americans always mispronounce her name.
Yeah.
It's Lara. Lara.
Right.
But people like me always say Laura, and I don't remember exactly when or where, but I definitely pronounce her name as Laura, and I want to say I'm sorry. So this is Lara.
You know what, Sean? Really, there's no excuse. I think she clarified that, on the air once, but I think before the interview started, probably a couple other times as well. So, appreciate that apology.
I think I've got it down now. It's Lara. And, one thing I wanted to share for listeners' sake, as you get into this interview, there's a couple things. She was incredibly wise and just quick and a lot of fun. And one thing she talks about or shares about is her whole story of getting diagnosed and her life turning around, and this happenstance meeting of a dad whose child had previously passed with the EDS, and all of a sudden, that helped launch her, career, if you will. So, an incredible story of hope and inspiration coming at you from that. That's one thing I pulled away from, and I'm sure you, as a listener, are going to love this story, and you're going to find things that you love about it. But pay attention to how all of this started for her. That was one thing that spoke volumes to me. Kyle, something you pulled out from this interview?
Yeah. She is an amazing leader, and she's got lots of people behind her. And something that comes with that is criticism. When you're in the eye of so many people and in the spotlight, it's just part of what comes with that. And she talked about that and how it affects her and how she tries to focus on the purpose and the outcomes of what she's doing. And I really appreciated that, because I couldn't relate it to some of the stuff I do at Farah, and I don't get to talk about that with people all the time. So it was really nice. You could even hear it in my interview. Like, I really hit on that subject a couple times because I wanted to hear her thoughts a little more.
Yeah, you were dead asleep until she started talking about that. And you're like, oh, yeah, no, I'm kidding. All right, without delaying anymore, for our listeners, here is our interview with Lara Bloom. Enjoy. Again, I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I'm so excited to have Lara Bloom on the show with us today, all the way from London, or somewhere on the other side of the world. Lara, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. And I am in London. It's kind of grey and pretty rainy outside. Typical London.
I'm pretty jealous. That's not like strange, right?
No, that is not. That's quintessential January London weather.
I'm not jealous of that weather, but London is a city I've never been to. And of course, there are a million cities I've never been to, but London is certainly one of those cities that I really want to visit someday. In fact, you're going to think I'm weird, but I actually really want to fly through Heathrow. Isn't that London?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm there most weeks, so
yeah.
I mean,
maybe you guys can meet up in the airport sometime. Or
get a coffee or something there.
Gladly.
Well, Laura and I met at the Global Genes Rare Patient Advocacy Summit in 2019, so just, 5 or 6 months ago, whatever it was. And I think what was so cool about Laura, I actually had no idea who you were. I'd never met you, never seen your work. You were leading a panel discussion at the end of day 2, and Kyle and I had done a similar panel discussion at the end of day 1. And I was in attendance of Lara's session, and her opening was so funny to me. I don't even remember exactly what you said. I just remember you had really good some really good jokes that kind of poked fun at yourself, but also poked fun at us, I felt. So it was just hilarious. I don't know who this girl is, but she is irrelevant. And then, of course, we had to have you on the show. So been looking forward to the conversation, for sure.
Me too.
Good. Lara, as we start off, why don't you let our listeners know a brief synopsis of your story, if you could.
Sure, absolutely. So I am currently the president and CEO of the Ehlers Danlos Society, and I've been doing that for the past 5 years, since we launched officially in 2016, and I left my previous position at EDS UK in 2015, and we spent about a year planning and setting up the global organization. So I've been working in advocacy and in nonprofit now for a decade this month. So it's lots to celebrate this year.
Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story? Like, how did you get involved?
Yeah, well, it seems like a million years ago, but 10 years, it's gone past in the blink of an eye. But my career before getting into the nonprofit space was a photographer. I was a photographer, and I worked at Getty Images. I also dabbled in paparazzi photography, and it was too hard with EDS. And at that time, I actually didn't know I had EDS. I was undiagnosed until I was 24. And I was struggling to kind of carry heavy equipment and to stand for long periods of time. And when I was then diagnosed at 24, I tried to go into kind of desk work in the photography space. And I didn't feel as fulfilled. I felt like I could be doing more. I had a taste of nonprofit life when I set up a charity raising money and awareness for AIDS orphans in South Africa. And I went there and helped build an orphanage. And that was so incredibly fulfilling and satisfying. And I thought I'd love to do this more. But it's always, especially in the UK, it's something that it's hard to imagine doing that as a career. Right. And it's much more of a thing that you do as a volunteer. And I was absolutely fine with that. And I knew I had to find another office job that I felt fulfilled in. And I had always wanted to be a spy and work in intelligence, which is completely mad. But I thought, law of attraction, why the hell not? I want to do something that it feels like it's in the international space and that is making a difference. So I took myself back to university and I did a second degree in global politics and international relations. And so by this time, this was about the end of 2009 at this point. And I'd been diagnosed since 2004. I'd had a lot of different health issues come along the way. And I'd been basically just working at Getty Images at a desk for that period of time. And so I left Getty and I made the kind of brave decision that I would do this university course in the evenings and I would find some kind of volunteer or part-time work in the day. And I was embarking on that, and completely in parallel at the same time, I went to a gallery event at Getty Images, and because I had a lot of old colleagues that were still there. And I met through one of my friend's husbands, so completely unconnected, this wonderful man, and we got talking, and he said, "Why have you left Getty?" And I said, "Oh, it's a really long, boring story, but I've got this health condition you've probably never heard of." And he said, "Oh, no, try me." And I said, "I have Ehlers Danlos Syndrome." And he kind of went a bit pale and he just stared at me and he said, "My daughter died of that when she was 19 years old." And I was like, "What?" And his daughter had vascular EDS. So that was it. It was like the stars aligned and it was so serendipitous. And we were just standing in this gallery space and our worlds had come together and we were talking. And I said to them that I had just come back from that summer. So this was kind of September, October time. That summer, I'd gone to my first ever EDS conference in America with the organization that was then EDNF. And I met people for the first time with EDS. I hadn't met anyone since all those years, since 2004 to 2009. And it was incredibly liberating to be in a room with people that understood what you were going through and knew what it was like to live with this, and you could share stories. And I came back looking for that in the UK and it wasn't really here. And we were talking about the UK charity that was then the Ehlers Danlos Support Group. And I said, "Why don't we put on an event for them and try and raise some money and see if they can put on big conferences like this?" And he said, "Okay, great idea. I've also wanted to have a chat with them." And he said, "Let's set up a meeting. Do me a favor. In the interim, write on a piece of paper everything you would want from a charity that would help you, and we'll go and talk to them." So we went and met with them. It was in a freezing cold church hall in Aldershot, in the middle of the country in the UK. And I'm sitting there in my usual animated way with my hands flapping, and you should do this, and you need to set up a Facebook page, and you should change your name, and you should do conferences, and you should sell hoodies. And I kind of went from the massive to the minutiae. And at the end of it, this gentleman said, "I've decided what I'm going to do. I would like to invest my money and to pay your salary for the length of your degree whilst you're thinking about what to do. And at the end of your degree, if you want to go off and be a spy, you can. And hopefully you would have helped set up the charity to be a little bit bigger. And you can do everything that you said on that piece of paper." And I was like, hang on a minute. I have no experience in doing any of that. That wasn't what I had in mind. I was just going to put on an event. And he said, "Well, no one else is doing it." And that kind of really resonated with me. I was like, yeah, I mean, why not? I built an orphanage with people I'd never met in Africa. Maybe I can do this, a cause that's so close to my heart. So that was it, really. And I really did think it was going to be short term, and I was going to be, the next Jack Bauer when I left university. But 10 years on, here we are.
I think that really speaks in this man's ability to read your character and be like, really, I want to take a chance because I think this person could actually really do something. It's kind of that intangible thing that he saw in you, I think, probably.
Yeah, no, I was very grateful, but it was also a hell of a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Because, everything I did, and actually to this day, everything I do, I really do in memory of his daughter, because, she doesn't have the privilege of being alive and being on this earth. And if I can do something that makes a difference so that people with VEDS and all the other types of EDS get to have longer on this earth, then I want to do that. And I had such a long diagnostic odyssey myself. I went through so much to get my diagnosis, and I know that my life could have gone in a very different direction if I didn't have the kind of strength of mind that I do. And not everyone has that, and it's not easy to come by. And so I really wanted to make a difference to as many people as I could and change things, because, if not me, then who?
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Lara, can you give our listeners a glimpse at what EDS is, or how that impacts your daily activities?
Mm-hmm. So Ehlers Danlos syndromes are connective tissue conditions, and there are 14 different types, and we know the genetic cause of 13 of them. And they are classified currently as rare diseases. That some of them are very, very rare, ultra rare, and some of them are rare. And the most prevalent type, the hypermobile type, which we don't yet know the genetic cause for, we think could actually be rarely diagnosed and actually a lot more prevalent. But we don't have the kind of studies and research that's needed to really start to prove that figure. So we're trying to do as much as we can to help that. We've been very lucky to have been donated $2 million to try and find the genetic cause behind that type of EDS. And so we hope over time that knowledge will grow. For me personally, I have, I was diagnosed in 2004 with the hypermobile type. I've got quite a bit of tissue fragility and things that aren't as usual with the hypermobile form. I do meet the criteria for hypermobile EDS at the moment, but there's also been question that I may have another yet to be defined rarer type of EDS, but who knows? And I think it's almost, I think diagnosis is incredibly important, but I think we can also get quite caught up in labeling and worrying about what everything is. And I think what the most important thing is getting the symptoms treated. And that's what we're trying hard to do, so that whether people have EDS, HSD is hypermobility spectrum disorders, wherever you are in that spectrum or whatever type you have, what's essential is you get diagnosed as soon as those symptoms begin, and you get those symptoms managed and cared for.
So when you were sharing your story of wanting to be a spy in school and just trying to figure yourself out, maybe in the mid 20 years old or so, you mentioned that, especially in the UK, it's not really an easy full-time job to get into healthcare, or not healthcare, but more nonprofit work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So obviously, you've been doing that now for a decade. And you've been crazy, in my opinion, very successful. You have quite a reach. Was going into that work full time easy for you with that gentleman's support, or was this still something you're like, I just don't know if I'm going to commit my everyday to that line of work? How did you come about that decision?
Well, it was, I think it's always a question. I'm a big believer in the universe, the law of attraction and timing. And I think a lot of it was timing. So I think I've definitely, things I never really talk about is the sacrifices I've had to make working in the nonprofit space. As generous as that gentleman was, giving 2 years of a salary, it was a less than half pay cut. So I was earning under half of what I had previously earned. And I was able to do that because I was in a relationship at the time where I had a very low rent. And I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to the university that I went to. And so I didn't have a lot of outgoings. And I thought, you know what, think long term. I really want to do this in my heart, and I want to make this difference. And I know that I've got a plan long term. So I will make the financial hit now. And remember, I wasn't young. I was 30 years old. So that's all well and good doing that when you're in your early 20s. But at 29, 30 years old, you know, I started EDS UK my first day in January 2010. And I was going to be 30 years old in a few months. And I was like, wow, I've never earned less.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I believed in it so strongly. And it had to be done. And it was like, I saw so clearly what needed to be done. And I'm a very ambitious person. I'm very driven. And I thought I could throw all my energies into the corporate world, or I could throw my energy into this. And who knows what will happen in a few years when I graduate. Maybe I will be a spy. And I never really thought past that. It was just like, I went and studied every evening, 6 till 9 o'clock at night, 4 nights a week. And Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I worked at my desk. And when I started, my desk was at the end of my bed in my bedroom. It was just me. And when I left in 2015, we were one of the biggest EDS charities in the world. And I had eight members of staff in the office working with me. And it was incredibly fulfilling. Wow. And it was a really hard decision to leave. But there was a real ceiling on what could be done nationally. And I knew that what needed to be done was international collaboration. And I cannot tell you the difference. It almost feels overnight, because we only launched in 2016. And since 2016, we've launched a global registry. We've got research grants. We've raised millions of dollars for research. You know, we've done events all over the world. We've brought the community together. We've got research labs and doctors and academics talking together for the first time ever. Just honestly, I don't know where 10 years have gone, because I never thought past this. It was just, this is what needs to be done today. And if I leave, there's no one else that's really doing it. And I'm driving this. And I spoke to doctors, and I was like, I'm thinking about leaving. When I left EDS UK, I was thinking about maybe trying something else, because honestly, the financial sacrifice I've had to make, you know, I don't own a property. I know that's not a big thing in the US, but in the UK, every one of my friends right now owns a property. They have kids. You know, I'm 40 in a few months' time. I have had to make some real sacrifices, and people think I'm swanning all over the world and living I think I saw hysterically. Exactly. I saw one social media troll the other day post on my social media that I was a 40-year-old millionaire going swanning around the world on the charity's money. And I was like, oh my God, if you only knew, you know, like I have nothing. I have nothing, but I have the wonderful people around me, and I'm incredibly fulfilled every day from what I do. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but it was a big decision, but also it just happened. Suddenly that was that day, and here we are 10 years later, and I don't really know what happened in between.
That's amazing. I think it speaks to the vision that we sometimes selfishly or uninformed have about our lives when we're young, right? It's all about me. Mm-hmm. I want to make a big paycheck and have a big house and a nice car. And then you realize at some point that it's not about that. It's about how much you can contribute to the world. And this other path, even though it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, it sounds like it's been incredibly fulfilling and has provided an amazing life for you. And I can tell just by the way you talk about it that you love what you're doing, even though it was not what you expected, and you're not a spy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it would be the best cover story, right? So maybe I am.
Yeah, I feel like that's something a spy would say.
Exactly.
So,
I couldn't possibly say.
I'm curious, in that whole mix, can you think of a time where you absolutely either regretted your choice, or maybe the word regret isn't so much, but maybe you let yourself down? Do you think you let yourself down at all in the last 10 years?
No, I think I can say that I haven't let myself down. I think that the only time, and regret is strong, the only time I've questioned what I'm doing and if it's all worth it is when there's the negativity out there that you sometimes get. You know, I'm working within a community that have been incredibly neglected for 2 decades at least. Many of them are undiagnosed. Most of them do not have the access to the care and treatment and management they deserve. They don't have the validation they deserve. And they are quite understandably resentful and frustrated at their journey that they have had. And I can relate to that because I had that journey too. And, you know, they see me. And for example, when I did my documentary, Issues with My Tissues, it was about me walking a marathon. And I was really taken aback by the negative comments I got, you know, things like, I won't get my benefits because you've walked a marathon and now my doctor won't believe me. And it's like, wow, I just didn't even think of that because, you know, you see people with cancer and with, you know, all different kinds of diseases doing these things and these physical challenges, and people don't question it. It's inspirational and it's wonderful. But when you're in kind of the bubble of your world and it's a small world, and people are just questioning you and questioning how, you know, you don't represent me, you're not ill enough, you know, you're an ableist, you're this, and it's incredibly hurtful and very, very hard. And, you know, it's like the more successful I've got and the organization has got, people are trying to tear me down and even more heartbreaking, the organization down. You know, we haven't had an organization there that is doing the work that we're doing ever. And now it's there and people in our own community want to attack it. It blows my mind. I just don't understand it. And it's days like that when you've worked all day and all night. You could be doing a conference call at midnight and you're staring at a comment on your social media and you're like, what am I doing this for? You know, I'm jet lagged. I'm seeing double of everything. Everything hurts. I'm exhausted. I'm fighting for all of you and for me and for everyone and for everything that needs to be made better in this world for people living with chronic and rare diseases. And that's what you're writing. It's like, wow. But then I remember that is literally a drop in the ocean, and the abundance of gratitude and positive comments and lives that you have impacted. You know, I remember when I did the documentary, I got a message the next day from this woman who said, I'm writing to you this to you on a park bench outside, feeling the fresh air on my face for the first time in 3 months. And I got up and walked because of watching your documentary. And that, I will never forget that comment. And I had it framed and I was like, that's why I did this. Because if I can just change a few lives like that and give people hope that you can have a good quality of life with this condition, then it makes it all worth it.
You just brought tears to my eyes. Anyone who knows me knows that's not hard to do, but I love that story so much. And you know, you mentioned the documentary, and Sean and I were involved in a documentary called The Ataxian. It's available on iTunes and Google and all that. And I watched the trailer for your documentary. I know Sean and I and a lot of people on our team going into the documentary we were like, all right, this is going to be awesome. Like, it's going to get 1 million people watching it. We're going to spread the word of FA and rare disease far and wide. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't that. It was absolutely amazing, but it wasn't what we thought. You know, there's not 1 million viewers, but everyone who sees it is really, really moved by it. And so, in the realm of speaking about the documentary, can you talk about, well, first of all, briefly, what was it about? I think you mentioned a little bit, but also, you know, your expectations for it and what the value is of that piece.
Oh, I mean, I can completely relate to what you're saying. I started filming the documentary. I did the marathon in 2011, so 9 years ago now, and I never wanted to be the subject of the documentary. My plan was that we were going to do a documentary, and I was going to kind of be the Louis Theroux, and I was going to host it, and I was going to interview other people, because I actually rarely talk about my story with EDS, because I think it's important that I don't do it through my narrative all the time. I think it's really important to represent all the different types of EDS and HSD. And so I was like, we're going to find all these stories. And these filmmakers were like, no, you need a story, you need a beginning, you need a middle, you need an end, and you need a journey that people can follow and be moved by. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let me have a think. And during this time, I was doing bucket collecting at the London Marathon. So this was April 2010. And I was watching this like 70-year-old man do the marathon with a fridge on his back. And he was going so slowly. And I was like, okay, if he can do it like that, I can do the marathon. And all my friends were like, you're mad. Like before this, I had never walked more than like 1 or 2 miles in my life. I was stopped by pain and fatigue. So it was a huge challenge. And I spoke to...
Real quick, a fridge. I just wanted to make sure that means the same thing in the UK as it does in the US. He was doing this with the refrigerator on his back?
Yeah, that's the one. A refrigerator.
All right.
Yeah. So I spoke to the film people, and I was like, I'm toying with this idea. Do you think that would be a good narrative for the story? And they were like, yes, love it. That's it. That's what we're going to do. And I was like, oh, God. So then suddenly the documentary was about me, and it was never my intention. But I just thought, okay, this is an amazing opportunity to break out. I don't know if you feel like this, but I feel like awareness, we're in a hamster wheel, and it's just within the EDS sphere, and we're speaking and we're getting out there, but we're not, when I walk down the street and I tell people I have EDS, they're still like, what's that? And we're not breaking outside of that bubble and out of our community effectively. It's certainly helped. We've had people like Jamila Jamil, Lena Dunham, Sia come out and speak about having EDS, and that has helped hugely. But that's very recent, and that's going to take time for that ripple effect to be seen. So my hope with this film was that it would make all the film festivals, it would get on, Channel 4, it would make incredible awareness. I didn't really think about it financially ever. It was much more, this would be an awareness project. And it's very hard. It was made on a shoestring. I think we made the whole film for under £5,000. And that was like 6 months of a producer and a director with 2 cameras, and they followed me the whole route of the marathon, bless them, with no training. They didn't expect that they'd get to do the training, so they were like as dead as I was at the end of it. And it was an amazing journey. The marathon day itself was the best day of my life, I think, one of them. And it was amazing. And it really, the impact the film has made on so many people, a lot of people use it as something that they show their family and friends to tell them about what the condition is. And it's, a lot of the content on there is out of date, but there's somehow the messages behind it are timeless. And still, 2018 and 2019, I took it on the road again and started doing a Q&A tour with it. Yeah. And sometimes there's 10 people in the room, and I'll try and go, whenever I'm in a country, I'll try and do a screening. And, sometimes people have said, aren't you exhausted? What's the point? There's 10 people. And I do it, and it's exhausting because it makes a difference to those 10 people in the room. And they get a chance to ask me questions about the condition, about my journey, about the society, about research. And it makes a difference to them in that moment.
How do our listeners find the documentary, and how do they watch it?
So it's on YouTube for free, and you just type in Issues with My Tissues into Google and it will come right up. Or you could go to my website, larabloom.com, and you can access it there.
So we'll shift gears a little bit, Lara. Obviously, you've spent many years committed to raising awareness and being a part of the process. Patient involvement is so important. And what kind of advice do you give somebody who's looking for a place to get involved, if you will?
Well, I'm passionate about patient involvement, patient engagement. I think it's so important to have the patient's narrative from bench to bedside as an equal stakeholder in everything, I believe, that impacts the patients at the end of the day. Because how can you possibly know how to conduct a research study, what kind of events you should put on, what drug treatments there should be, if you don't have the patient involved in the entire process? And I think what I've realized and learned from firsthand experience over the last decade is what really makes the difference between someone being able to do this as a career and someone being able to do this part-time, and neither is better than the other. It's just different ways of doing it. But what gives me, I think, the longevity is, like I've said, I rarely talk about me. And I think if you can take your narrative out of it, there's always time for your narrative. If you've got a room full of donors and you want to make some people cry, that's when you give them your story, your pain, there's a place for everything.
Right.
But when you're campaigning tirelessly every day and you're advocating, you have to remember the community that you're standing with, and that everyone has a different story to tell, and that everyone has a different experience and a different pain and a different expectation and a different hope and a different fear and a different access to care and a different financial ability. And I think with everything I do, that's what I try and remember. And I think that's why I find it so hard when you do see the negativity on social media accusing you of exactly the opposite of that, because that's how I've done what I've done after a decade. And that's how I'm here, because I don't do what they're accusing me of. And I do speak on behalf of what I hope is our entire community, not giving my experience, but saying, we need help. We need change. We deserve better. And these are some examples of why that is. And this is my personal experience. And that isn't the same as everyone's. And my ability to cope isn't the same as everyone's. And the way that I conduct my life isn't the same. And there's no better ways. There's no one way to live with a rare disease. And I think that's what you have to be mindful of when you're going to do this. As a career, certainly, and to an extent as a volunteer and part-time as well.
One last question. What are the things that you're working on right now? What can our listeners look out for from you in the next however long?
Yeah, well, 2020, it's going to be a busy year. I've also, last January 2019, I launched my vlog. And my New Year's resolution in 2019 was to do a whole year, and I did, and it was fantastic. And I'm excited to do the same again this year. So people can find my vlog just by typing Lara Bloom into YouTube. Again, going to my website, larabloom.com. Be great if you could subscribe to that and follow along with that. And that follows my personal story, but also what I do every day for the society and how I do my advocacy work. And at the Ehlers Danlos Society, which is ehlers-danlos.com, there is so much that we're doing that's exciting. We've got conferences all over the world this year. We've got our global registry, which is building, and I would urge anyone with EDS or HSD to make sure that they are on that. Every single person will make a difference to future research. We've got research studies. We've got funding for research. It's very exciting. We've got our EDS Echo, which is our part of Project Echo educational platform that's growing as well. So lots to stay tuned on, and please reach out and connect. It would be wonderful to meet more people in the rare disease space. Thank you both.
Amazing. We look forward to sending listeners your way, and of course learning and following and hearing more of your story. I didn't know you were doing a vlog. I'll have to check that out. Super excited.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you both.
I think that was my favorite interview so far this season. It was so good.
Wait, that's been the only interview so far this season, Sean.
Yeah. Well, then it's definitely my favorite so far.
That's not untrue.
Oh, so much fun. Yeah. She's an incredible lady, and I absolutely love her accent. So
Yeah, man.
That was good. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we also wanted to share some thank you notes, something we started doing recently. We think it's important and valuable to simply take time to reflect on things we're grateful for. And Kyle and I both believe in doing so, it helps us live beyond challenging circumstances in our lives. The attitude of gratitude, if you will. And
that's right.
I'm going to not say that anymore. I've said it a few times.
Don't say that.
I don't think I like it. But we all know what it means. We all get it. I think we've heard it.
Yeah, the concept is good. Yeah. Just not those words.
Right, okay, so I'll never say it again. So, Kyle, do you have a thank you note to share with us?
I do, and this note is for the founders of the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance, Ron and Rachel Bartek. Absolutely amazing people. So I write, Ron and Rachel, thank you for starting the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance. Your action has given hope to me, my family, and thousands of other families around the world. With an unrelenting focus, you have taught me the power of collaboration. Everyone in our community has a heightened sense of self-worth because of the principles you profess and live out every day with great integrity. And thank you for all the hugs.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great thank you note.
So Sean, do you have one to share with us?
The one I wrote. So at the time of our recording today, I just got back from a 7-day cruise, right? I went with two really good friends that I'm connected to through work, and then my mom. So the four of us went, right? It's me and three older ladies, a generation ahead of me.
Nice.
All right, so a little setup. I am, well, they were very, very kind toward me. And so here's my thing, Mom, Sheila, and Anita, thank you for a fantastic time on our cruise. You all are fun, funny, and so incredibly helpful. As I think back to our time, I realize your patience greatly outmeasures my stubbornness, my independence, my testosterone, and my unmistakable sarcasm. I'm grateful that you put up with me. So it's actually a phone call I need to make too. But I think just looking back on it, I've cruised with the wheelchair. That's still kind of a new thing, and obviously on our ship, and everything about it was just a little different than cruises and trips in the past. So there's definitely some circumstances on this trip that applied the pressure. So those are our thank you notes, and we want to encourage you guys, our listeners, to do the same thing, whether you express it or maybe journal it or text your thank yous to a note. We believe it's important to just reflect on things that make life better for us and things we're grateful for. So we'd encourage you to do the same thing. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to sharing another one with you soon. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com, and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.